I'm crazy about my husband, so that there's an upside to this emptiness.
What if I told you that Julia Roberts, at 58 years old, just revealed 7 Hollywood legends she had intimate relationships with that nobody knew about? Which A-list actor made her feel like time stopped when he looked at her? And why did one connection teach her about the devastating cost of love? Stay with me, because what Julia just confessed will change everything you thought you knew about Hollywood's most beloved star. She's the woman who became a household name before turning 30, the actress who could illuminate any screen with just her smile, the billion-dollar starlet who seemed to have life completely figured out. Julia Roberts has spent nearly 4 decades in the spotlight, playing romantic leads in countless films and making us believe in love stories both on and off camera. But then something extraordinary happened. At 58 years old, sitting in a softly lit studio with cameras rolling, Julia Roberts decided to pull back the curtain on her life in a way nobody expected. When the host asked an innocent question about regrets or roads not taken, Julia's eyes flickered with something dangerous, something that suggested this conversation was about to shift dramatically from the polished, carefully curated version of herself to someone far more real, far more human, and infinitely more revealing. She leaned back in her chair, that famous smile playing at the corners of her lips, and her voice dropped to something intimate, carrying the weight of secrets held for decades. "There are 7 men," she said quietly. 7 actors, 7 legends, 7 connections that shaped me in ways nobody could ever imagine. 7 stories that nobody knows. Tom Cruise. Julia's voice carried tenderness mixed with amusement as she described how that man moved through the world with hypnotic certainty. Working with Tom wasn't just about scenes they shared on camera. His intensity and absolute commitment made you feel like the only person in the world when his attention turned toward you. Tom had a way of looking at you that made time stop, Julia revealed. People saw him as an action hero who'd push himself to impossible limits, but what they didn't see was the vulnerability underneath all that relentless drive. Between takes, in stolen seconds when cameras weren't rolling, Tom would let you see something real that nobody else got to witness. One night after an intense shoot in New Orleans, they found themselves on her hotel balcony, talking not about the film or careers, but about everything else. He shared things she'd never told another soul, and she let him see parts of herself she'd kept locked away. By sunrise, they both understood something had shifted between them, a recognition of 2 people seeing each other for who they really were underneath all the fame and pressure. Brad Pitt. Brad was different, Julia explained with a complex smile. Where Tom was driven intensity, Brad had effortless grace. He moved through life like he was dancing, and being around him was intoxicating in unexpected ways. They met at a party early in both their careers before he became the icon, when he was just a beautiful actor with enormous potential and a lightness that drew people like moths to flame. Here's the twist. They never worked together on film, but found themselves in each other's orbit repeatedly over the years. Brad had a way of making you feel like the most important thing in his world, like everything else faded when you were together. What made him special was his genuine kindness that made vulnerability possible. You didn't have to pretend or maintain any facade. Julia remembered a night in Aspen vividly. They had a conversation lasting until dawn, and somewhere between the wine, the honesty, and the sheer connection, they became something more than friends. It was brief, but real in a way that mattered. Leonardo DiCaprio. Leo, Julia said softly, was someone she always respected tremendously as an actor, but never expected to feel what she felt when they finally connected. He was so committed to his craft that it was hard to separate the man from the actor sometimes, but when you got him alone, there was this brilliant, complex mind, someone who thought deeply about everything and wasn't satisfied with surface-level anything. They met years ago at an industry event with an immediate intellectual spark. After hours of talking about everything from film to environmental issues to love and loss, that intellectual connection transformed into something physical. In a quiet moment in his apartment, he kissed her like he was trying to communicate things he couldn't say with words, his entire being pressed into that moment. Leo made love like he acted, with total commitment and presence, nothing held back. Owen Wilson. Julia laughed genuinely, saying she could still hear his voice in her head. Owen had infectious energy that made everything feel possible. He was funny, genuine, and utterly unimpressed by Hollywood hierarchy, which she found absolutely refreshing. They had immediate ease, no games, no pretense, just 2 people who liked each other and could make each other laugh. They had a brief but beautiful thing while filming together, stealing moments between scenes. He'd tell ridiculous stories, making her laugh until her sides hurt, then lean in and kiss her like none of the industry craziness mattered. With Owen, everything felt light but not superficial. He had depth underneath all that charm. Matthew McConaughey. Matthew was pure sex appeal wrapped in Southern charm, Julia revealed. That man moved through the world almost hypnotically. They worked together early in both careers with undeniable chemistry, impossible to ignore. Matthew wasn't just a pretty face. He was intelligent, soulful, and genuinely interested in connecting on deeper levels. Their intense connection lasted several months. They'd meet in quiet places where nobody would look for them. He'd play guitar while they talked about life and love. He made you feel like the most interesting person he'd ever met, like your thoughts and feelings actually mattered. There was an honesty that was disarming. He didn't hide behind layers, but was genuine and present in an increasingly rare way. Denzel Washington. Denzel, Julia said with tender care, is one of those men who carries himself with such dignity and presence that you're immediately drawn to him. He's not just talented, he's genuinely good, and that combination is incredibly attractive. They connected at an industry event, and hours passed like minutes. Denzel had a way of listening that made you feel truly seen. What followed was a brief but profound connection. Denzel loved with intention, careful, thoughtful, making sure you knew exactly how he felt. No confusion, no games, just direct honesty. It was beautiful and real, but complicated because they had lives in different places with incompatible paths. Johnny Depp. Julia took a breath, and you could sense this one mattered differently than the others. Johnny was darkness and light mixed together in one beautiful, complicated package. An artist in the truest sense, completely dedicated to his craft, willing to disappear into characters in ways both brilliant and concerning. They met when both were searching for something they couldn't name. The magnetic pull was hard to resist. Johnny had vulnerability that made you want to protect him, though he was completely capable of taking care of himself. He was moody, complex, sometimes difficult, but underneath was this beautiful soul desperately trying to connect with the world. When asked if these relationships were kept completely private, Julia made an important distinction. Private is better than secret, she explained. Secret implies shame, like you're hiding something because you're ashamed. Private just means you're protecting something sacred, something that matters too much to share with the entire world. At 58 years old, Julia Roberts wasn't revealing these truths to destroy anyone or create scandal. She was claiming her own story, willing to be seen as a full human being with desires, passions, and a romantic history extending far beyond what Hollywood wanted to believe about her. People forget that celebrities are actually just people, she reflected. We feel things intensely. We make mistakes. We fall in love. We experience the full spectrum of human emotion, sometimes on a more public stage, but fundamentally, we're the same. These 7 men weren't scandals. They were chapters in her life story. Teachers, lovers, partners, and mirrors reflecting back who she was becoming. Julia Roberts spent nearly 40 years teaching the world about love through her films. But now, at 58, she's teaching us about truth. And that truth, messy, complicated, and deeply human, is far more powerful than any story she could ever act out on screen.